Welcome to the chaos sector. First off, when we present a theory, it's a theory simple as that. Nobody has the actual concrete truth. So stop expecting investigators, you know what, I'm starting to dislike that term even. Stop expecting content creators to provide some groundbreaking evidence that solves a case. And to that one individual, it is not hypocrisy if we present our speculations and theories, but require someone to provide the source of their speculations and theories. You know why? Because they expect us to present that in our episode. We stand corrected with some things already, but it's based on our mistakes, not someone else's. We are reporting, don't forget that, sort of a mockery of the mainstream media, of course. It's in our disclaimer, reporting, investigating. You can consider this the new age of media reporting. Still working on a few things here and there, of course. Oh, I have this information that proves this or proves that. The murders were recorded on live stream and there are photos of the alleged killers together. Please, I want to share this with you via email. Shouldn't you be sharing that with the defense? What the fuck are you doing spreading it on YouTube? That needs to be sent to the defense as soon as possible, and it should have been sent already. After all, everyone is asking us to somehow contact Ann Taylor about our investigations, right? But you have the so-called evidence at your disposal. Bingo. Submit it to the defense, expose the truth, and get those housemates justice. Right fucking now. You've somehow not done this? I would take a wild guess that you don't have that evidence you claim you have. For an investigator, many look to you to put the pieces together, and at least to the point a specific theory is the consensus. So you have to be careful in absorbing tons of information. We read post, raise an eyebrow or two, and think about if that information is worth addressing or not. For example, the emailer also claimed that Chief Fry is a part of the Odin cult, and other individuals as well. Quote, "Thank you for letting me know you have my emails blocked. Now, I know exactly why you have not discussed the Odinists involved in the Idaho 4. I've wasted my time sending you info on it in hopes that you would cover it. Hell, you do a breaking news video on a knife that may have been put in the dumpster, but you have ignored the fact that animals were tortured and killed on Banfield. Did you know that other people besides the Idaho 4 were murdered that night? Did you know that after the frat guys beat Ethan up at Linda Lane, he was found at Banfield at 3:01 a.m., right by the two cops? He was then taken back to Linda Lane in time for a parade of Kaylee, Ethan, and Murphy in a car driven around Linda Lane and Banfield, sometime after Kaylee allegedly got her face shot with a police beanbag gun at 3:55 a.m. by a cartel guy. Thank you for letting me know that you support cyberbullying and harassment too. I asked for an email because when I went to post the other night, they were not sticking. Here is JJB. He's an Odinist. Chief Fry is one too. So is DM, that being Dylan Mortensen, we assume. Unquote. I find it quite funny how they ask, quote, "Did you know?" And in that same breath state the term allegedly. Allegedly, my friend, means you yourself don't even know. That's bonkers. A beanbag gun? Seriously? Now who would have saw this that relayed this information to others and it ultimately landed in your lap to claim? Because you said she was allegedly shot in the face. So where's the source? Who told you that? This is exactly the problem with this emailer. You expect individuals to break down what you've sent them. And when they don't, you assume they're not serious about the case. Maybe it's because what you are sharing is typical hearsay. And some do not feel like wasting time trying to validate a bunch of hearsay. They have every right to reject your claims. They put a link in the comment section, I guess, to prove the claims about Chief Fry being an Odinist. We actually clicked the link to another YouTuber's channel, Rajo Productions, who we believe is an insider in some manner, and all we saw was a TikTok video of someone with a tattoo of the cult's symbol. Now, did this prove that Chief Fry was a part of that cult? Did it even prove the alleged individual being James Bailey was the person in the video? No, it didn't. And that's a prime example of how speculation transforms into misinformation. Where is the proof that Chief Fry is an Odinist? I'm sure you have the proof, since you claim he is. Where's the proof that Dylan is one as well? Surely you have that proof also. Let me guess, we have to dig through endless pages, turning each one, until we'll finally reach the source, which ends up stating at the end of their claims, allegedly. There's a huge difference between claiming something is true and presenting a theory that something may be true. You provide a link to so-called truth, the investigator clicks the link, then they are led to another link, which only clutters up their investigative work and efforts, and time. Now, do you see why it's important to provide sources? We are not held accountable for providing sources. Because for one, everything we're presenting is, well, right in your face to examine. Second, we do not claim something is true. We merely provide a theory, and it may become very dramatic in how we break it down, that it appears we are claiming it's true. But we always point out, it's our theory. Yes, our theory. But someone claiming something is true in the comment section, depending on how they present it, is obligated to provide a source. If it's presented as a possibility, there's no harm in that. But if it's presented as a fact, and that person is trying to convince others it is a fact, then you're obligated to prove that fact. Come on, this is fundamental. If we were to dig into that and not find any evidence of it, then we have just wasted time in looking into something someone else was told was true, who know it's not true, rather speculation, or allegedly. That time could have been used to look into things that are actually relevant firsthand to the case, such as the housemates associations, like if the girls got a private driver or did they catch the bus? What predicament were the girls in? Regarding Jack's warning, were there drugs being exchanged in the grub truck surveillance? These are things investigators focus on more than anything else because it's direct sources of information and evidence that provides a potential trail. Was Dylan's boyfriend at the home at any point that night? Why was Dylan unaccounted for earlier Saturday night, but every other housemate was? You understand?
Exactly. It only leads to the belief that this is a form of, wait for it, damage control, trying to pull you away from the core because it focuses on a direct theory. Now, what the emailer presents seems logical, but that's the kicker. Drug and human trafficking, huge amounts of money owed, an evil cult just axing helpless victims to death all over town, organ harvesting. Yeah, many would fall right into that rabbit hole because it's intriguing, it's suspenseful, it falls in line with the typical murder mystery interest. But not once does the emailer provide an actual source of the information, yet at the same time making claims that this group was responsible, that person was the big fish, and so on. Oh, you have proof of who did it. You have a photo of the group together. Who did it? Oh, wait, it's not your investigative work, it's someone else's work. And you state it is, here's that word again, allegedly displays the killers in the photo. That's not proof. It's someone else's theory. Surely that photo looked suspicious, and there's a possibility there, and someone was even holding up a golf club. Oh no, it starts to add up now. Well, Ethan wasn't the only one who played golf, but I can see how that person came to that theory. But that's a theory, not proof. The emailer may say that's exactly what Chaos is doing. There is no proof. Exactly the fucking point. But the difference here is you are claiming something as fact, not a theory. 1 minute you present something as a fact, the next you state allegedly. This translates to, I'm just collecting a lot of speculation and regurgitating it to content creators to present as a fact. The problem we pointed out in the first response to this person. They even claim that Kohberger was a federal agent working on one of the biggest drug sting operations. Or, Kopacka and Kohberger were best friends, but Kopacka framed him by leaving the knife sheath in the bedroom after the murders. There is no proof to this date that proves Kohberger and Kopacka were friends or even associated with each other. Since everyone has been digging into those social media accounts, surely they would have ran across a photo of Kopacka and Kohberger together, right? To our knowledge, haven't seen not one. If there were an association, then the theory has merit. But you can't just force an association to create a dramatic theory for everyone to blindly follow.
We don't visit the backroom of comments often as it consists of a lot of nonsense, but there are individuals in the backroom who've also made comments, well, publicly. Let's look at a few. We have the time, I guess. Quote, "Could you be bigger hypocrites? You bash Drip, and rightfully so, for not having proof for what he says, yet you accuse people of being drug dealers with absolutely no evidence. That's so wrong and thoughtless it's hard to believe. If you think a blurry, grainy video is proof, then why haven't they been arrested? You do exactly what you've accused other creators of doing. Just because you speculate something doesn't make it true, so you really should shut your mouth and stop being judge and jury." Unquote.
You need to shut the fuck up!
A bit agitated, I see. First of all, the clown is making money off of this case. We aren't. That's the first distinct difference. And don't tell me it's the cult just showing support. The clown has literally made it a money train in true crime investigating. Not the only one, but was the focus in that episode. Second, we didn't bash the clown for not having proof of what he says, Everyone is entitled to their theories about the case. If you actually listened, you would know we bashed the clown for presenting theories that pull you away from the core focus of the investigation on purpose. Did you catch that?
On purpose.
How do we know it's on purpose? Because he's making money off true crime cases. Heck, if you can't figure that out, might want to look into that before criticizing us. But we broke that down in that episode anyway. And this just erases the rest of your post, claiming we're hypocrites. So claiming we do exactly what we're accusing other creators of doing has been corrected. Just because we speculate something doesn't make it true? Did we ever make that claim? We make it a point to establish it's our theory and speculation because some people somehow think it's a fact or we're claiming it's a fact when we literally states it's our theory. And third, are you seriously asking why haven't the drug dealers been arrested?
You need...
Not even going to comment on that one. Oh wait, I'll address the drug dealing element. Because they claim the small timers don't make much money. They make enough to continue to do it. Let's leave it at that. And also, we don't have tons of different theories. We have what we call sub-theories. You have a main theory, which is what you build from. Everything else are sub-theories. Or what's another word for it? Let's see, how about evidence? 1 minute they agree and state the Jack-in-a-Box employee did describe Bonnie, and the next minute they're telling us to shut our mouths, trying to create a false hypocrisy on our end. I've noticed a bit of that as well throughout the comments. You have people saying, quote, great work, awesome analysis. But in that back room, they're saying something totally different. I guess they figure it's safe back there. Oh, chaos won't check back here because they've not done it all this time. But we do scope things out from time to time. Just because there isn't a reply doesn't mean we're not there. Anyway, let's continue. Now, one person claimed that Scruffy in the grub truck footage is actually Hunter, Ethan's brother. Now, it does resemble him, but is the sister there too? And weren't they supposed to be at the Sigma Chi party with Ethan and Xana at this time frame? But then again, this would be around the time Ethan and Xana left the party, approximately 1:45 a.m., right? If it's Hunter, then why didn't he, speak to Kaylee and Maddie? If it is Hunter, I'd think he would have given them hugs, like the rest of those frat guys who saw them. Not sure what to make of it.
Quote, Brian Kohberger has been framed by a cartel leader, Doug, from Washington State, that was called in along with Cartel John from Montana. Cartel Doug talked to Framing BK in 2016, and this lady Shayna was there and knows these guys. It's just been found out this cartel leader, Doug, is an ex-FBI agent who got fired for being a pedophile. A lady who was dating him when he was an ex-FBI agent said she was on the scene when he met up with Emma and Demetrius. He's got some European-sounding last name, but Demetrius said, I will just call you Papa Rogers. The ex-girlfriend said he has an ankle monitor but is able to fly all over the place and is cartel leader doing drug trafficking. And she said Cartel Doug has most of LE in his control. Brent Kopacka worked in drug and human trafficking, and he allegedly left the sheath to frame his friend Brian. Then, the corrupt LE continue the frame job. Brian K. is a federal agent and considered a military asset. His dad is allegedly the same and has been over to Washington State a number of times. A lady said they play their parts well. In my opinion, this is a big FBI operation, and eventually they will arrest the real killers. Right now, they are trying to work on all this trafficking going on into other states and countries, allegedly, unquote. Now you take that same post and have a true crime investigator, not commentator, and they present that as a theory. The first thing they would have to do before even presenting it to their audience is look into all of those individuals named in the post, Doug, John, Shayna, and of course linking the familiar names with those individuals. Now it's not that the theory isn't possible or even logical, it's the allegedly aspect of it. Someone can compile a bunch of figures who, are criminals, link them to the murders simply by drug association, and it creates an entire theory, which would be logical, yet it potentially was just plucked from different elements within the area of focus. For example, some Cartel Doug individual. Can you prove that this person is a former FBI agent and a part of a cartel? That's the first thing. Second, his association with Bonnie and Clyde. How about the claims against John from Montana? Who is Shayna? Has anyone interviewed her in the true crime community? Now the emailer will say, this is what I was told or what I discovered from someone else. That's the point. You are passing along a theory that you expect others to do as well. And so adamant on top of it like you have the truth and everyone else is lost in the shuffle. Yet it's, once again, allegedly. A theory may make you feel like it has to be the truth. It all makes sense, and you find yourself motivated to share it with others. I completely understand. But lurking throughout the comment section, claiming this and that, especially what you have claimed, you might want to think about sharing that with the ones who can actually make use of it more, such as Ann Taylor.
And this emailer requests that we don't display their name. Why not? You're the one making serious claims, and I'm talking very serious claims regarding the case. Yet you want to avoid the spotlight? Claiming you have photos of the alleged killers, claiming there is a live stream of the murders, claiming certain individuals were behind the murders, by names I might add, claiming Chief Fry, James Bailey, and even Dylan are members of some cult, claiming Kaylee was shot in the face by a fucking beanbag gun. That just sounds so ridiculous. I have to chalk that up as proof you're just trolling. Claiming Kopacka and Kohberger were friends, and he framed him by leaving the knife sheath in the house. Claiming Kohberger is only being charged for the murders until they round up all of the drug rings and the actual culprits, which is quite stupid, to be honest. You want to know why it's stupid? Because there would be a national apology to the American citizens who were convinced Kohberger murdered those housemates, and so what's going to happen with the current trial then? The murders make national headlines, suspects are rounded up, because after all, there were multiple killers. Those who know who they were anonymously squeal, multiple people are arrested and charged for those murders, and then the feds crack down on the drug rings in connection to this case. They don't frame someone for the murders, and then work backwards to round up the real killers. And since you're claiming they actually know who was responsible for the murders, then why frame someone to temporarily protect the individuals they will eventually arrest and charge for the murders? And furthermore, if you claim that Kopacka framed Kohberger, by leaving the knife sheath in the home, are you suggesting that Kopacka was one of the killers? Wouldn't his DNA be on that knife sheath as well? Yeah, we know his death is of concern. Some claim that he wasn't going to go down for his part in those murders, had a standoff with the cops, and they killed him. We don't know why he flipped out and was in that situation. But if you attempt to link him to the murders in Idaho relative to his death, there has to be a link to even suggest it's possible. To this point, the main thing that people draw to is that he was from Pullman and stayed in the same apartment complex. No evidence has been revealed that he was friends with Kohberger, nor associated with him. Kohberger was originally from Pennsylvania. Apparently, Kopacka was as well. This is not a connection, and that wouldn't be the determining factor anyway. There would be photos of them together at some point, even in Pennsylvania. Before you present the theory, you have to weed out everything that conflicts with the theory to make a conclusion. Although Kopacka and Kohberger shared not only the same home state, and even in Pullman, Washington, without any evidence they were associated with each other, you miss that very important link to tie them together, let alone being involved in the Idaho murders. Everything we present is based on what's in front of us. The bus theory is based on, the bus being right in front of the grub truck, the bus being a free service, and the bus route takes the girls near their home. It doesn't crumble into being irrational even if it's not true. It stands as a possibility. We don't try to force it to be a possibility because it is a possibility just based on those elements. Some say they saw the girls get into the car, and if they caught the bus, you would see it in the window's reflection and hear it. We'll get back to that. Perhaps in the next episode we'll address that. Always up for the challenge. Cool. If he's just being framed as some sort of placeholder, how in the fuck do they proceed with a trial and verdict if the real culprits are still out there and they're going to be charged with the same goddamn crime Kohberger has been framed for? Oh, they're just going to bust the drug rings for the drugs and secretly charge them with the Idaho murders? Oh, let me guess, Kohberger's going to walk. That's how they'll do it? So what was the point of even framing him? Do you think the feds aren't aware of drug trafficking and who's involved? They wouldn't need to frame Kohberger, just arrest Bonnie and Clyde, a direct link to those drug trafficking cartels, and bring down the whole operation. But you're clearly not thinking, well, obviously, who do you think oversees the drug trafficking? That's right, the Alphabet Boys. They're the biggest criminal partner. This is flat out bonkers. What the hell is, I can't even. Claiming Ethan's body was found on Taylor Avenue with 2 officers apparently right there. You're the one raising the temperature with your claims, allegedly. I sense someone who is trying to play the victim here, claiming people are threatening you. Well, that has nothing to do with the chaos sector, nor our audience. See, this is deceptive behavior, playing the victim to affirm to yourself that you're right and have integrity, and others are wrong and are rude and inconsiderate. That game doesn't fly over here. Have you ever thought that the reason people are challenging you is because you are posting walls all over the place without substantiating any of your claims? Do you not see the reason for you being challenged? If someone asks you, where did you get that info from, that is merely trying to obtain key information. But if you're not providing any tangible sources, then people will start to, that's right, consider you someone spreading misinformation. And of course, you act like the victim. Oh, you're being bullied. You're being harassed. Aren't you an adult? And let me point this out as well. Providing sources to others' theories is not proof that what you're claiming or echoing is, well, proof. It's just someone's theory or speculation. You don't go to other content creators' channels and post walls of what you viewed from others and present it as the truth or facts. In a cover-up, nobody is running around being interviewed snitching to everyone about a murder case. There isn't groundbreaking evidence that points the finger directly at an individual or a group who someone would publicly claim to have proof were responsible for the murders. If they're that close and have that direct knowledge, trust me, they're too busy in staying safe rather than being interviewed and spilling the beans. So those so-called interviews revealing who did it is nothing more than speculations. For example, you refer us to Dago for information about the private driver. Dago has, on average, 5 to 6 hour streams. We scanned through several streams and never saw him discussing the private driver. We were simply exhausted in searching for the particular episode because he didn't have the private driver in any of his stream titles, which obviously made it a headache in tracking down that so-called evidence you claim he has. I wouldn't be surprised that Dago doesn't claim it was a 59-year-old man from Pullman, but rather took from the Law and Crime article, which interviewed the so-called private driver, who claimed to stay 1,200 feet from Kohberger in Pullman. Now let's stop right now and get to the bottom of it. We checked Facebook for Eric Gower in Pullman, Washington. You know what the results gave us? Nothing. Nada? Absolutely nothing. Surely they would have at least Facebook. Most older individuals have at least Facebook. Oh, in the general search, with no location specified, there's a guy named Eric Gower. Let's check profile. Seems to check out, looks to be about 59 years old. Okay, that checks out, but there's no information of where he's from, no way to tell if that's the same person. It would be different if that profile has a hometown of Pullman, Washington. Then we could start to dig into it and figure out if he was the private driver or not. But because there isn't anything in that profile, it's just someone named Eric Gower. There are many Eric Gowers out there, and this one definitely doesn't provide any information for us to go by. We even searched the Pullman Rideshare group on Facebook, and once again, there is no person named Eric Gower in any of those groups. Pullman to Moscow, to Seattle, Moscow, Idaho, to wherever, that literally is the group, and the results come back empty. But going back to our previous series, you want to know who was a part of those rideshare groups? Bonnie Bailey. Some argued she was looking for a ride instead of offering one. It's open for interpretation in our eyes. Goes back to a prior theory. Bonnie Bailey was the private driver and the DoorDash driver, and JLR pretended to be the private driver to cover for Bonnie. Yeah, that's what we presented. There's a guy named Eric Grover from Idaho Falls. There are so many variations and similar names that one can use to pretend to be a private driver. And even a Google search, that is just a mere search for Eric Gower from Pullman, Washington, literally directs us to none other than Eric Gower from Moscow on Facebook. And right below that, that's right, JLR's video. The reason Eric Gower from Moscow is the top of the search results is because the person right below him dumped out that claim that he was the private driver. Let me say this. Eric Gower's wife works for Moscow PD. I believe she's some director, assistant of some sort. I think they claimed it was Eric Gower due to the relativity. Eric Gower is from Moscow, went to the university, provided a public ride service for students, and his wife worked for the police department. Yeah, he was the private driver. But once again, how could he reside in Moscow, Idaho, and stay 1,200 feet from Kohberger in Pullman, Washington at the same damn time? Do you see the confusion here? Obviously, somebody is not who they say they are, and that's what we broke down in the prior series, and once again now. Come on, is this thing on? Eric Gower from Moscow, Idaho was the base subject, but they wouldn't dare use his actual full name, so they changed it to Eric Grower, and we even checked for Eric Grower as well. Same result, none. This name, though, was given to authorities as the private driver. If you can't provide a tangible source to your claims, then you might want to stop flooding the comment section with it. And people genuinely want to know, they also want to put pieces together. But if you basically lead them along, they will lose interest in what you're saying. And your mention of someone claiming you got their channel shut down, well, it seems you are giving us a warning, similar to such an action taken. You still haven't responded to our request. Where is the source that proves there is a 59-year-old man named Eric Gower, who was the private driver from Pullman, Washington? This is where we left off, and I noticed you're cunningly avoiding providing that so-called proof. Oh, but I noticed your response to someone else regarding the issue. I think you don't want your post in the episodes because it will reveal the nonsense you are lurking around spewing. Now you responded to another person, claiming that JLR interviewed someone who was not the private driver. Okay, now can you please, once again, prove that the person you are claiming was the private driver is in fact the private driver? Don't deflect from it, don't disregard it, just provide the evidence and we'll respectfully look into it. Everyone is waiting on this proof. You know why? Because that's a key element of the case. Just give us that proof, please. Oh, you advise us to check Dago's channel out to confirm who the private driver was? Why didn't you just lead with that in the very post you claim it was a 59-year-old private driver from Pullman? And furthermore, if you obtained the info from Dago, surely you yourself researched the very same information to directly provide to us, right? Why should we? Don't you find it odd that you're claiming the private driver is a 59-year-old man from Pullman named Eric Gower, and others have claimed it's a 29-year-old man from Moscow named Eric Gower? That Eric Gower does provide ride services for students. We updated that information, but this is where the confusion came into play, if you've paid attention. The interview that the so-called private driver had with news media outlets claimed to stay in Pullman, specifically 1,200 feet away from Koberger. He even claimed his wife was scared to walk the dog, etc., etc. But the Eric Gower that provides ride services for students, of course, does not reside in Pullman. He resides in Moscow. If it's not the Eric Gower from Moscow, which is more likely to be, then who the hell was that who was interviewed by the news and gave all of those details? Now, can you please answer this question? Is this person who had that interview with news media the same 59-year-old Eric Gower from Pullman? Because if you say it is, then we have a major problem. Why do we have a major problem? Because the private driver's name, which was displayed in the original PCA as Eric Grower, was later redacted and concealed. Now, why would they reveal the name in the original PCA, but conceal it in the redaction? If you say it's to protect the identity of Eric Gower, then they didn't do a good job of it, because I'm saying his name right now. In the news interviews, the so-called private driver claimed he dropped the girls off around 1:56 a.m. Once again, we're just going to keep drilling this home. But in the initial report, Moscow PD reported the girls got home around 1:45 a.m., and this, of course, would have to come from the private driver's accounts. Olivia scrutinized them for the incorrect time. They went back and redacted the PCA to the correct time. And guess what they did also? Blanked out the private driver's name. Now, don't you see the connection here? They knew that person was not the private driver because they didn't give the correct time of when the girls came back home. I know, the family claimed that the driver took the girls home often and even was a friend of the family. Unfortunately, they are not in a position to convince anyone of anything. Everyone has to look at this case and the investigation through the lens of a cover-up. If you're sucked into the media's depiction of the family, the housemates, the town, even the suspect, you will ask questions or have statements based on that perception. But you have to acknowledge that statements and claims many have are automatically put under the microscope. In that interview with Law and Crime, the so-called private driver didn't claim to be a friend of Kaylee's family. That's a key element. Yet, he spoke about their jobs and how they were good girls, blah, blah, blah. If he was a friend of Kaylee's family, he would definitely mention that in the interview. He didn't do it because that statement could be questioned if Kaylee's family had never mentioned he was a friend of the family, you see? He would not be a friend of the family. Nothing personal or relative to that family. Just magnifies that this so-called private driver was an impersonator They obviously knew where they worked and the names of the housemates. That's easy to find out. But he never stated he was a friend of Kaylee's family. If you were a friend of the family, surely you would recall befriending the father, the mother, helping the other kids in some form. None of that was mentioned. Flat out faker. Moscow PD knew that someone was impersonating a private driver, and of course this is the cover-up playing out. Here's the point. Somebody pretended to be the private driver, simple as that. A year has passed and the private driver has not been identified, nor the DoorDash driver. Yet statements have been provided from these unidentified key players. In context of the case or from an investigator's perspective, they are possible suspects based on these mysterious aspects. And that is why it's important. You claim you don't give a fuck about Eric Gower being the private driver, as it's not that important? Oh, that translates to, you have conceded that someone has impersonated a private driver that didn't even exist in the first fucking place. What you had was someone driving around following those girls home who pretends to be a rideshare driver and even a DoorDash driver. And we even came to the logical conclusion that JLR was the one who had been interviewed impersonating a private driver, covering for the actual person who was driving around following those girls home. See, they couldn't give the correct time of the girls' arrival back home in the initial report because they were too busy plotting against them, and the initial time given is when they actively started to track them going back home. Following that smart transit bus all the way back, so anxious to catch them walking home, they weren't thinking about checking the time of when they arrived back. They were focused on attacking. And here's one of those questions where some are looking through the lens of the media's narrative, paraphrasing, quote, if you claim they took the bus home, they have CCTV cameras, so we would see Kaylee and Maddie on the bus. And why wouldn't they come out and state they were the source of transportation back home? Unquote. Do you see Kaylee and Maddie coming home in that leaked security camera footage, which has the time of 1:56 a.m. of their presumed arrival back home? You don't see it, right? You don't even see the actual physical footage neither. Why don't you see this? Because it's a cover-up. Smart Transit is not going to come out and claim they took the girls home because this eliminates the private driver, and it also means they walked home, and it automatically makes that black coat discovered big-time evidence. You understand? We've presented it as a theory, and one we are leaning towards more. But it's also possible they got a ride. We're simply breaking down everything, how an investigation is supposed to go. What we concluded was someone simply took Eric Gower's profile, knowing that he provided ride services to students. Okay, wait, let's break it down more for some who haven't viewed it. We came to the conclusion that it wasn't the Moscow Eric Gower because he has several degrees, a wife, and a job as an outreach coordinator for the youth. He has a very busy schedule, and it's unlikely that he has time to squeeze in being the designated driver for drunk college students on Saturday nights. A good deed, of course, but it fits the bachelor type of guy more so, not one with a wife and a job working with the youth. Plus, this would be in the late hours. I'm sure his wife doesn't want him to risk getting tangled up in any college drama. Some suggested it was this Eric Gower, including JLR. We mentioned the only person who had claimed it was Eric Gower was in fact JLR. Somebody responded saying that's not true. He had been interviewed early on, but of course they couldn't remember by whom and exactly when. Then we broke down the actual interview the so-called driver gave to Law and Crime, examining the statements, the oddities of how they depicted things, and claiming to be from Pullman. At that very point, the driver hadn't been identified, like right now. Some claimed that the authorities simply had a typo. Incorrect. When obtaining key information such as someone's name, especially a name like Gower, you're making sure that last name is spelled correctly. When they ask Eric, how do you spell your last name, sir? He spells it out, they write it down, and the name is Gower, not Grower. It doesn't matter who exchanged documents and information, that name will not get misspelled, because there is someone specifically assigned to make sure that doesn't happen, regarding police reports. And even still, they have to review or proofread their reports before they even think about releasing it to the public. What does all this mean, you ask? The reason the last name was Grower was because the person spelled the last name this way, and the authorities collected it. They don't know if there is a private driver named Eric Grower, or even Gower. They're collecting the information from the so-called private driver of the victims. Regardless of which angle you have here, someone gave a false statement to the authorities. Oh my fucking, JLR has also been charged with giving false statements to authorities. His freedom is suspicious, with all of the felony charges he has racked up. And if you're privy to how that works, usually there is, how do we say, cooperation. Spidey sense is tingling. There's a mouse in the house, my friends, I think it's safe to say it. And that pulls this person even closer to being involved in the cover-up. JLR reviewed the unredacted PCA, which spelled the last name Grower instead of Gower. Now he claimed it was the Moscow Eric Gower, who was the private driver. And for the most part, that's what everyone assumed. But once again, if he was the driver, how is he from Pullman at the same time being interviewed about his accounts on that night? Because JLR impersonated a private driver, used the name Eric Grower to throw Moscow PD off for a moment. They reported that name in the PCA. Then when things started to get suspicious, they redacted the name, blanking it out after the incorrect time was given by this so-called private driver. At some point, Moscow PD may have searched for a private driver with the name Eric Grower in Moscow, Idaho. The results landed them to, guess who? Eric Gower, the UI alumni and outreach youth coordinator. Checked his profile, saw that he did provide services for students, and decided to look into it. Contacted Gower and asked him did he drive those girls home that night. He said no, and they knew someone had slipped one past them. And the impersonator is able to get away with it. Why? Because Moscow PD had to cover up the murders anyway. Yeah, very cunning. They can't arrest him, right? For what? Impersonating a private driver who had driven two of the victims home? Nope, gotta eat that one, buddy. Because they can't exploit that due to that blowing the investigation through the roof, due to all of the tangled webs. You understand? And JLR, to add insult to injury, essentially framed Eric Gower by claiming he was the private driver that night. Uses Eric Gower as a source of relativity. Someone gave him information on Eric Gower from within, perhaps Bonnie. Then he simply used Gower's outreach services of being sort of a chauffeur for the university students, added the letter R to the name to prevent another charge of impersonating, but still impersonated the relative services he provided. Okay, let's calm down a bit. Informants. Many have claimed Kohberger was an informant. Some have claimed others surrounding the case were informants. Bonnie and Clyde, Dot, WSU Kim, Ina and Harsh, some of those inner circle peers. Heck, even some claim a few housemates were informants. But what if there was an informant within the true crime community, right under your nose, and you didn't smell him? People can change their lives, obviously, but the eyes tell a lot about a person and where they are in their life. Those eyes still show deception. They have a glaring darkness about them. Something is being kept secret and protected. JLR even tried to link Kohberger and Bonnie together, like they conspired to murder those housemates. Projection, my friends. He was the one who conspired with Bonnie to impersonate a private driver to protect that wretched witch and her piece of shit boyfriend. There are very slick and cunning individuals behind this. Now, of course, there isn't concrete evidence that JLR impersonated a private driver, but he has a history of impersonating others and did prison time for it. This is not slander or judging because this theory doesn't depict him as a genuine person. Sorry to say that. With a history of impersonating, you don't truly know if that person is being genuine or not, because impersonation is based on, what? Manipulation. Psychological and emotional manipulation, attempting to convince someone that you are someone else, like a true crime investigator. We apologize in advance to JLR if he's not involved in any way, but what are the chances that someone is impersonating a private driver in those interviews? And JLR claims a specific person was the private driver, and he himself was charged with impersonation several times. That's one huge coincidence. Surely you can see why we present that theory. You can agree, you can disagree with this, but what you can't do is justify the aforementioned fuckery regarding a private driver. You know what, this is unacceptable behavior. We do try to engage with the audience often, and we end up addressing individuals that shouldn't gain this much attention. But every response is just more of a reason to address them because it indicates someone is snooping around. We don't like snoopers. Let's put it into perspective, which indicates they're a snooper. If I obtained information from Dago that the private driver was a 59-year-old man from Pullman, Washington, I myself would research that to verify Dago's claims. Just in general, as a quote, sleuther, when someone questions who the private driver was, I have the proof that reveals who that private driver was. But I won't refer them to Dago because I myself can provide the evidence. After all, I'm the one interacting with that person trying to convince them the private driver was that particular person. Oh, but I can't provide them with the source because my internet doesn't work all the time. I see. Typical get-out-of-jail card here, my friends. When it's go time, they claim there's something wrong with their internet connection. This is why they can't effectively provide the information. Why do this? I mean, the time you spent, which you claim you spent over 5 hours flooding the comment section with vital information, why wouldn't you just upload a quick video about it? People do it all the time, and they're not trying to be true crime investigators. They just felt that information needed to be presented. Doesn't seem your internet has problems when you're running on flooding the comment section with your post, now does it? The same typing you've done, you can do in an editing program, have a bit of background music, and bingo, that information has been presented. No face, no voice, just the information. The same way you're doing now, right? But I think the reason you don't want to do it that way is because you will be held accountable for what you would claim. Yes, you, specifically your channel, you the content creator, would be held accountable for it. So you would rather attempt to get others to do the work for you, hiding in the shadows, and even more so, leaving the content creator subjected to potential severe scrutiny about what you have claimed that you want them to share with their audience. In other words, snooping around. And this aligns with someone who has been sent to the channel, perhaps by other content creators trying to ratchet up our investigative work with all those alleged claims, or even someone who is attempting damage control sent by the opposition. Report the channel, claim this is cyberbullying, whatever. Do what you have to do or what you intended on doing anyway. Who knows? But to wrap all this up, provide an article, a link to a website that proves there's a 59-year-old man named Eric Gower in Pullman, and they were the private driver. Until then, please stop flooding the comments section with your claims. Now see how we just flipped it back onto you? We can report you for harassment. You see? But we don't block, report, none of that. We address our problems just like this. It's a cruel and dark world out here. You better get some tougher skin. This is the Chaos Sector.